Today's guest is Faheem Rashid, a genius that beats me in every single arm wrestle. Please, if you love this episode, as I know you will, like, subscribe, and make sure to leave a review. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'm talking to you like I'm talking to you on the phone, so...
My name is Faheem Rashid.
What's it like having a name that rhymes perfectly?
In many languages, people's names are somewhat phonetic, right? It just rolls off your tongue. The first, last name is usually one thing. It's not until you get to more of the Germanic and the English names that they don't really rhyme as much. My name comes from Arabic origin, and the actual translation of my name would be something to the effect of the righteously guided teacher.
I hear that, and I immediately think of a very specific personality. Have you found that you've adopted some of that kind of teacher energy in a way?
That's some of the arguments for making sure some people say you want to pick the best name for a person. That's creating a self-fulfilling prophecy for them. Mm-hmm. They are the XYZ that you name them, so they live up to that name, or vice versa. Like there's a saying that if you name your kid Garbage and they turn out to be a bum, you shouldn't be mad at them. It's your fault. But at the same time, I don't know. It's not for me to say. It's for others to say when they get to know me.
So I want to start this off by just giving you a huge compliment, because this is something I heavily respect and admire about you. You are literally everywhere. I'm talking about like every audition Sam goes to, she sees you. I feel like you're on every set. It's like the most badass thing. Even though you're everywhere all at once, you always find time to be there to support your friends and be there for the people you love. So How do you find that balance?
It's all an illusion. It's all an illusion. There is no balance. What I will say is I don't actually have many people that I could say that I'm very close friends with. But the people that I do care about, I tend to remember more and try to keep them more ahead in mind. So, for example, I recently did something with a bunch of friends where I wanted to give them a present. I immediately thought, okay, who would this benefit the most? And a couple names popped to mind, so I reached out to them immediately. When it comes to being able to, stay in people's lives, it's just because I don't stay in so many people's lives that it feels like I'm more involved in the people's lives that I am. But in actuality, I'm not. Acting, yes, we do it because we love it. We do it because it's a expression for us. But at the same time, it is a business. We're in the business of sales, and what we're selling is ourselves and our professionalism. A casting director will not call upon you to go up to the production unless they feel they're comfortable enough to this person will perform and not reflect badly on me. People look at casting directors and agents as like the gatekeepers. They're not a gatekeeper. They're just like us. The agents always has in their mind, am I going to make money doing this? Am I going to be able to survive like this? Same thing with the casting director. We're always like, give me that role. Well, the casting director is like, I want you to take this role because if I give the production what they want, they'll come back and give me more business over and over and over again. Every time they call upon you, I always try to perform. 1, to build that relationship. 2, to practice. And then 3, it's fun.
Yeah. It's so cool because you're able to approach it from almost like a detached mindset, which is really great for not getting too caught up or too ironclad fist on one specific thing. What in your background would you say has allowed you to see it from that business-like angle? Because a lot of people, they're just like, I want to be an actor because I want to be on TV. And you're very like methodical, like, well, this is how I do this, and then I can do that and that and that.
When you go to an audition, the most of the time you'll hear more no's than you hear yes. And the truth is you'll actually never hear the no, because if you don't book it, they just never come back to you. Even though I'm saying you'll hear no's, you're not actually even hearing no's, you hear nothing. Again, we're in the business of sales, and if I were to try to sell you something, for example, I was selling you this microphone, we could always justify why you didn't want it in our own heads. Okay, maybe it didn't fit your unique situation. It's not the right shape you want. It doesn't have the specs. That's fine. If I'm selling myself, I may go through that myself and be like, okay, why didn't they want me? They didn't want me for this, they didn't want me for that. And after thousands of auditions, that could bog down on someone mentally. But you gotta remember, it's not. It's just business. Do not take it personal. You always try to improve. I'm not gonna say I'm perfect. I'm not. I'm in classes now because I know I'm not perfect. But at the same time, if I don't book something, I don't go back and try to analyze everything. No, I usually know if there's a mistake, I know what my mistake was. But then I have to forget it and move on. You are not right for every role. I'm not right for every role. I mean, if that was the case, Tom Hanks will be in every single movie, which is true. For a period of time. It did feel like that. But he's not perfect for every role. You are an actor, but that's not the only thing you are. You are yourself. That's one aspect of you. But that doesn't mean if they didn't like that aspect of you for this role, that there's something wrong with that.
I love that. And I got into this exact same hole where we do attach so much of our quote unquote identity, whatever the hell that identity actually is, but we attach so much of it to our job, the things we do. And I love that you're able to kind of detach your identity from something and recognize that, oh, my identity is never going to be this one specific thing because it's all temporary. And you've talked specifically about like the sales aspect of it. Do you come from like a background in sales?
Yes and no. I did. I was a realtor for a period of time. I was also used to work in sales for insurance, as well as I used to sell shoes for a period of time. I did a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But my background is kinesiology. I studied the human body. I'm also a personal trainer. I used to be obese myself, so I used that on myself to lose weight. I was 240 pounds, just under 30% body fat. Fast forward a couple months, and I lost about 65 pounds.
What got you into kinesiology? Was it specifically so you could implement it on yourself, or was there something more specific?
Growing up, I guess you could say one thing I always had was my body. I was always slightly strong for my age. Over years of people telling me, oh, you're strong, I just gravitated towards that. And then when I was a teenager, I actually started used to working out with a strongman who was at one point in time the Massachusetts strongman. So every Sunday I would go to his house, push cars up and down the street.
Really?
Yeah, lift up giant yokes on my back, flip tires, all that stuff. I used to do that
Yeah. Okay. I feel like one of the memories I have of you is might have been when we were on appointment or something like that.
Yeah.
But we randomly did like an arm wrestle for some reason. And I just remember being so overblown with how the hell does this much strength exist in a single forearm? You destroyed me.
Oh no! Jesus Christ!
How did you meet the world's strongest man? And you said Massachusetts?
Yeah, he was the religious center I went to. He was also a member there, and him and my dad were good friends at a point in time. And I used to like to work out, and he was like, "Hey, if you want to come work out, come to my garage." His garage is literally decked out full of equipment from gyms he got kicked out of because he used to lift too much. And then his backyard, he created pillars for Atlas stones, which are those big rocks that people pick up. He has 2 flipping tires, bunch of yokes, and then I moved down here, and I kind of stopped doing that, but then I got into martial arts and stuff like that. When I got into acting, am I going to be the chubby Indian guy? No, those are not the roles that I want to do. I need to change myself. And then 2, I also got heavy to the point where I got sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a condition where you do not get enough oxygen when you sleep, and it's usually caused by girth, the amount of weight on your throat. My case was, I was just so big that it was cutting off my airway when I was sleeping. So I was not going to use a machine to sleep.
Yeah, that doesn't sound ideal.
No. Instead of using a CPAP, I just lost the weight, and I, of course, lost the sleep apnea.
Have you always wanted to get into acting? Was there a specific moment when you found your love for it?
I could remember the very first time I ever cried was actually I was in my grandmother's room in New York. I was watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the episode where his dad came back and he left him. Yes.
Yeah.
Don't even remember how old I was or if I understood what I was watching, but I remember crying when his dad left him again, and Will was like, "Why doesn't he love me, man?"
I ain't need him then, and I don't need him now.
Will.
Nah, you know what, Uncle Phil? I'm gonna get through college without him. I'm gonna get a great job without him. I'm gonna marry me a beautiful honey, and I'm gonna have me a whole bunch of kids. I'm gonna be a better father than he ever was. And I sure as hell don't need him for that, because ain't a damn thing he could ever teach me about how to love my kids. How come he don't want me, man?
Years later, one of the best memories I ever have between me and my own father was Bayshore, New York. There was a movie theater that's no longer there now. It's now a soccer complex. It's a small little theater, and me and my dad went to go see Jurassic Park 3. We were the only 2 people, except for one other guy, in the whole theater watching the movie. The movie wasn't the best movie, but the thing is, it was just me and my dad in that theater watching it together.
Interesting.
So I grew up, let's face it, my parents were immigrants. Like many immigrant kids, TV became something that raised me somewhat. So I always loved film. I always loved TV. And then when I went to high school, I actually got behind the camera and took a couple media classes where I got a small award for being best media student when I was graduating and stuff like that. Never pursued it because I was told there was no money in it really. So I need to get more realistic. So I moved away from that. And the idea was to go into like physical therapy and stuff like that. So that's where going to school for kinesiology came in.
Interesting. So it was more like a cycle of returning back to those roots.
Yes, it was. And at the same time, it's I just never really had confidence in myself. You mentioned the doing a lot of things through the physical aspect. Well, for a lot of people, and myself included, the physical comes first because it's easier to see results. It's hard to work on yourself mentally because you never actually see results. But if you go from a person that does X, Y, Z, and then your body changes over time, you can physically see those, and that can affect your mentality.
Yeah.
And that's the type of person I was. I had a lot of demons on the inside as well that I didn't really work on, but what I could work on and see results was my body. I still always have the urge to go eat. A lot. But I could see physical results in myself that I stopped myself from doing that for a period of time. I still enjoy life, don't get me wrong. I could still get kicked out of an all-you-can-eat buffet. But I don't go crazy like that all the time.
Yeah.
When it comes to one's personal view of themselves, it's a little harder to look on the inside and work on that. But you still do it.
There's a lot of cool meat to explore in that.
Go ahead.
To phrase it like a serial killer.
Go ahead.
First, I did want to go back a little bit because you said that because you came from immigrant parents, you were raised on TV. What do you mean by raised by TV? Specifically, like raised to adopt the American culture?
No, it's more the fact that they were just busy working. I mean, my parents came to this country with nothing really, and then they had to raise me, and eventually they had to raise my sister. They had all that stuff. Let's face it, we lived in a place where family was slightly farther away, so there was not much family. So our babysitters for a period of time was the TV. I remember at one point in time, I had the whole entire TV guide memorized. I knew what shows were coming on, when, and which episodes. And most of the time on Nickelodeon and stuff like that, I knew the episode, so I could almost recite it verbatim, what was going on.
I am so impressed by your brain. You have such a tact for just retaining information. That's really beautiful. Is that something you've always had? Because this is something I also remember on appointment, because we got to really talk a lot. I asked you something simple about like nutrition or something like that, and then you easily went on for like 45 minutes of just super in-depth and technical information. Has it been just you genuinely love learning new things?
I am someone that is naturally very curious, and I do like to know things, but at the same time, I like to say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. I know a little bit about almost every topic, but then there are certain topics where I know a lot about, and just because that's the way I learn. I weight train about 5 days a week, and usually when I weight train, I listen to audiobooks, so I'm just learning new stuff over and over again. I tend not to talk about things I don't know, but when I do know something, you can't stop me from talking.
That. Oh yeah, no, and when we had that conversation, I was blown away. I was like, shit, I should have a notebook in front of me and start taking these notes.
Yeah.
A lot of people I've talked to that come from immigrant parents, they talk a lot about the extra pressure that they feel because being first generation comes with its own unique sense of wanting to basically make your parents' sacrifice worth it. I was curious if you felt any of that.
It's something that you also struggle with sometimes when you look at it. Again, I'm only talking about myself.
Of course.
I look at some of the things I've done and some things I didn't do, and then I compare it to like the struggles my parents went through, and it's just like I could have done or should have done much more. I mean, my parents left their home country when they were teenagers and XYZ, and then now they have this. I feel like I'm almost wasting time because, you know, I have much more opportunities than they did. I'm not taking advantage of it. So that's something you always feel, as well as, again, each culture is slightly different, but there is I think there is a little bit of everyone wanting to make their parents and family proud. And let's face it, being in a industry like acting, it's not one that happens often. People always say, oh, this guy's an overnight success. No, he's not an overnight success. He took 10 years. Jen Fisher, who is Pam from The Office, she moved.
Yes, I loved that book.
She went for her undergrad in acting in, I forgot what state she's from, Minnesota? I can't remember.
Something like that,
But she spent 4 years in a college for acting, and then she moved to LA. It took her 3 years to get her SAG card, which she got through doing extra work, and then it took her 8 years for her first big role.
Oh, I'll have a Coke, please. Is Pepsi okay? Well, did I say Pepsi? No, I said Coke. I want a Coke!
And then 10 years before she got the Pam in The Office.
I have so many people to thank for this award.
That's 14 years from the point she started acting in college to Pam in The Office was 14 years. Michael Caine started acting as a teenager in England, where he joined pretty much a youth group where acting, and then he became like a deadbeat dad, and it pretty much took him 20 years from the point he started acting to Zulu, which is his first major role in a feature film.
I suppose there are such things as gifted amateurs. We can Cooperate.
Emma Stone, people know her from like Easy A, and she's big everywhere, but she moved to LA, I think when she was 16.
Something like that,
And she didn't get Easy A until she was like 27.
One thing Denzel Washington says all the time is,
But I continued to fail and fail and fail. But it didn't matter because you know what? There's an old saying, you hang around the barbershop long enough, sooner or later you're going to get a haircut. So you will catch a break, and I did catch a break.
if you just keep working hard and keep moving in the right direction, eventually something's gonna give.
Yeah.
And I think that brings up a lot about people's misinterpretation sometimes of luck. Because I think a lot of people will assume, oh, you have to just be blatantly lucky for any success to come your way. And in a lot of ways, yes, but in a lot of ways too, luck is something that's very predictable. Like if you put yourself out there, eventually you're gonna get lucky.
Yeah.
It's gonna find you.
Really weird tangent, since you were talking about barbershop and stuff like that. Your hair is amazing right now. I mean, it's
thank
longer
you.
than the last time I saw it.
Yeah.
It's still very lush and shiny and stuff like
I
that.
love Lush. Which also reminds me, you have phenomenal bone structure.
Yeah.
You have a lovely jawline. It was one of the first things I noticed as you were walking back in. I was just like, damn. Anyway, that's a weird tangent.
No, I mean, we are actors. We have to know.
Yeah.
This may seem shallow, but let's face it. We have to know what our advantages and disadvantages, especially when you're on camera. You want to show the best you got. Me personally, I have 3 features, I guess you could say, that are stand out. 1 is my jawline, 2 is the bridge of my nose, and 3 is my hair. Those are my actual 3 best attributes. Then the 2 things that are kind of, I guess, quote unquote flaws is my mouth is slightly crooked. My right side is higher than my left, and my right ear sticks out compared to my left. So when I'm on camera, I don't show that, but I try to show those. I mean, it's
So many actors would love to look at themselves the way that you do. I love how you're able to just have this brilliant attack, because that's what confidence is. Like you naturally exude confidence because, and maybe this is something you've learned, but you just completely embrace every part of you without like taking anything personally. What has that been something you've had to learn, and how have you developed the ability to do that?
you only have 2 options in life, pretty much. It's either you could change it or accept it. I was, 80 pounds heavier than I am sitting right now. I didn't like that, so I changed it. Can I do anything about my face besides plastic surgery? No, and I'm not going to do that. So I like the way I look. The things that I don't like, I change. You work towards the things that you can better. The things you cannot better, accept it, learn to love it, and utilize it.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know who it was? No, maybe. I was going to say Dax Shepard. I referenced Dax Shepard. I think it was somebody on Dax Shepard's podcast, but it was something along the... Oh, you know who it was? It was Ethan Hawke on Dax Shepard's podcast.
Okay.
What's unique about us is what we feel shame about. And oftentimes that shame creates tripping behavior. The truth is, that's what's beautiful. And the same thing as an actor. Your shortcomings, if you let them be, are actually gonna be what's most interesting.
Yeah.
The funny thing is we spend so much time trying to hide whatever our insecurities are without realizing that, well, if only we embrace them, ironically, it would make us that much more interesting and that much more unique. At least he says something along those lines.
I remember I took a class with their whole entire part of the class that they focused on was your entry point. Your entry point was the item that will make you unique enough that if you utilize it, you can be able to find your entry point. One of her former students, he's mixed black and white. But if you look at him, he looks Dominican. She said, go learn Spanish. I'm black and white. No, you look Dominican. Everyone looks at you. That's your entry point, is you look Dominican. I know you're not, but go learn Spanish. He learned Spanish, and he first 4 roles he booked afterwards were all Spanish speaking.
Really?
Because he looked Dominican. Yeah. And I'm slowly doing that to myself, because obviously you look at me, I'm Indian. I'm slowly learning Hindi now, just because I am Indian. Go to my great-great-grandparents. I am Indian.
When you were talking about how you went to lose all of that weight, and you specifically referenced, I don't want to be the chubby Indian guy, what was the representation like for you when you were looking at movies, and how did that affect what you wanted to do as an actor? Because I know I talked to Athena, and she talked about how for the longest time she didn't think it was possible because she didn't see enough roles representing people that looked like her.
Yeah.
Did you ever experience any of that?
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Here's the thing. I don't look at I have more of a global view. Next to Hollywood, the biggest industry for film is Bollywood.
That's true,
And
yeah.
I'm brown. I mean, I am literally in the majority, because there's about 2 billion people that look like me. And growing up, yes, there are things that I did gravitate towards, because I could see that there was a resemblance. For example, Growing up, one of my favorite Disney movies was Aladdin. Why? He was a brown dude. I didn't really look at representation that hard because to me, I don't care what you are, period. I don't. I grew up in a place where I grew up in Long Island, it was initially, I think it was like my high school was 35 or 40% black, then 35, 40% Hispanic, then 15% white, and then the last 5 or 10% was everything else. And it was just already mixed. I don't care. Kevin Sorbo is white, but Hercules was like, damn, that to me, I looked at Hercules and I'm like, that's a man, and stuff like that. I didn't really notice the fact that I'm brown holding me back just because I don't care. I mean, yes, as I start acting more, yes, there is definitely barriers. And especially before COVID, a lot of the auditions I used to go to, I do remember going to the audition, and these were mostly commercial auditions. You could tell I was the diversity pick where they were looking for like one type of look. And then all of a sudden there's me. And as soon as I go into the room to do my audition, you could almost see it automatically on the director's face. It's like, okay, no, let's move on.
Yeah.
But
how did that make you feel?
That wasn't. Yeah, of course that did get to me a couple times, but at the same times, it was more of the fact that I was driving down to Austin, which is the 3.5 hours for these auditions, and it was like, I gotta drive 3.5 hours back. So,
and I constantly see that you're going to Austin.
Before COVID, I would be driving down to Austin multiple times per month just for the audition. So that's 7 hours of driving total for a 5-minute meeting, pretty much.
That's insane.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Before COVID, I may have left acting just because I would lose $100 in gas alone just doing that, and doing it week after week was kind of getting me. And then COVID hit, and now everything changed from in person to self-tape. So it's after self-tape that was a lot better for me because I could just do multiple takes at home. I don't have this 7-hour drive on my head. Just like no. Now I only drive down to Austin for an actual shoot itself, which I'm perfectly fine with.
I know you said your parents are immigrants.
Yeah.
Did they immigrate here, then have you? Were you a baby and then?
No, I was born in New York. My parents came to this country a couple years before I was born. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So you're from New York. How long?
Correct.
How long were you in New York for?
I moved to Texas when I was 19. My family moved down, so I moved down with them. The high school I went to was about 4 blocks long. My graduating class was over 1,000 kids. In my parents' view, it wasn't the best high school environment for someone to grow up in. With me, it was fine. But then my little sister was about to go to high school, and they didn't want my little sister to go to that environment for high school. So they came to Texas multiple times before, and they liked it. So they moved down here. My sister went to private school down here. My dad is a software engineer, and the company that he used to work for got bought by a place right here in Dallas.
Oh, yeah, that works perfectly.
That happened after we moved. So it's like, okay.
y'all must have manifested something or something like that.
Yeah.
So then you went to college and got a degree in kinesiology, right?
Idea initially was to go into architecture. I spoke to a couple of architects and stuff like that, and talking to my parents, they said, don't move towards that. And I've always been someone that's very physically active. I used to do martial arts. I used to do all that stuff. I'm pretty beat up now because of that. But
what kind of martial arts did you do?
Mostly, my experience with martial arts is mostly with judo as well as ninjutsu. But the ninjutsu I did it's pretty much Shotokan karate with a little bit more weapons. So
nice. So you could kick my ass. Good to know.
That's years ago.
Yeah.
It was that. And then I went to kinesiology, and the idea was after kinesiology, I moved into physical therapy. I worked in a rehab place for a while, and it just wasn't for me. So I took a little gap. I've always had it in the back of my mind that I'll do film one day. And at one point in time, I was just like, why am I waiting? Mm-hmm. So I flew out to LA, toured a couple studios, talked to a couple schools down there. Then when I got back here, I had to make the decision, do I go behind the camera again, or do I try standing in front of the camera this time? Because I've never acted really until 6 years ago. Yeah. That's the first time I ever took an acting class, which I bombed, by the way. But
I think everybody does to make you feel better.
But yeah, that's where I went back, and then I eventually went back to UTA and studied film and stuff like that. So yeah.
It's so interesting. So it's cool, and I'm definitely going to start projecting on you a little bit because I almost went down a very similar path before I ended up stopping. My parents were telling me, hey, you need to do something with your life instead of just waiting around for acting to hit. I had the exact same thought. I was like, oh, well, I've always been active. I've always been physical. Maybe I should go into physical therapy. And I went and did all my volunteer hours. I was going to go, I think it was College. because they have a really good program.
Yeah,
I was
they have
gonna go
a.
do there.
Collin County has the physical therapy assistant program. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna do. I was gonna become a PTA,
Yeah.
and then eventually become a PT.
Yeah.
Then I didn't do any of that. I missed the deadline, and then I also had a thought where I was like, wait, I don't actually want to do this. I just logically thought it could work, and I was curious if any of that was playing in your mind, or if it was just a genuine, I love this and I want to pursue it with physical therapy. I mean,
At the end of the day, we have to be realistic, and there is no guarantees in this industry at all. I mean, I could quote some of the numbers from like SAG and stuff like that. It's very abysmal when you look at the actual numbers.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to make a living off of this. So you also have to look at long-term thinking. So yeah, that was the idea. But at the same time, it's just like, am I going to not take the risk because it's scary? With that said, though, I didn't really get a return on my investment until last year. Before last year, I've lost money on acting every single year until last year. Then I started booking things. So it's just like, you never know. I mean,
yeah. It seems like you were working to toe the balance between realistic and also following your dreams in a way.
Yes and no at the same time. Because you could even say I'm still not being realistic. I'm making some decisions now for acting that if you look at it financially or logically, it just doesn't make sense. But are you really going for taking a shot in the dark? There is a lot more diversity now in recording stuff. There's not that many roles for someone like me, and it's just the way it is. I'm still making decisions that may not be towards the realm of realism, but I guess that's just the sacrifice I'm willing to make.
See, that's what I really love about these podcast episodes. It's able to be a group of people that are still in the midst of trying to get there, to get where they want to go. It's not perfect. We're still just trying to find our own way, and yet it can show still how much wisdom there's to be gained in every step of the process. Like, Dax Shepard has his podcast with all the celebrities that make it, but it doesn't mean you can only learn from the people that have already made it.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be really cool to look back at these episodes when all of my guests go do these wonderful things, and you get to see the mentality that they had as they were on their way, which I think is really cool.
Not only that, it's just that the people that made it because of their system worked when it worked. As time moves on, like the biggest example of that is COVID. COVID was a big thing that, to be honest, a lot of things that worked 3 years ago no longer work at all because of COVID. Again, to quote Carrie Fisher in her book, she said, make a bunch of friends with people that are around your level, still trying to get them. Stop trying to become friends with people that it's already made it because it just looks like you're grabbing at them. No, just enjoy the process, because that's really what it is. It's a process. There's no guarantee.
I've had so many people in that chair, every single person, no matter their ethnicity, their gender, their background, where they've came from, their age, they all say, I'm just trying to enjoy the process better. So It's funny how there's a collective understanding. It is the process. That's what matters. But it's so difficult to actually, when you're in the midst of it, we can have some moment where we're perfectly enjoying the process. Like right now, I'm looking at you, we're talking, and I'm just here and present, and it's awesome. But then tomorrow, I'll probably, I don't know.
Even though I'm saying all those things I'm saying, it gets to me too.
Of course.
The last 2 weeks, I was really low when it came to acting. It was like, I take a class every Sunday with a casting director. One of the things she makes us do is write a blog every week where we just talk about the stuff that happened during the week, what we're feeling. It's just anything you want to write. There's no right or wrong answer. You just write down whatever. And the last 2 weeks weren't the best for me career-wise, I guess you could say. It's just, I started thinking about things again. It was just like, what am I doing? And even though I know all the stuff and I know how I'm supposed to look at it mentally, it's sometimes hard to always be in the right mindset. But then all of a sudden last week I got a couple of amazing newses, and it's just like, yes, the last 2 weeks are gone. So it's like, yeah.
Back when I was going to therapy, I haven't been doing that recently, but one thing I'd like to share, because it's really helped me have more self-compassion, because I think honestly, self-compassion is the secret to rebounding and resetting, because the reason we spiral, or at least the reason I spiral, is judging myself whenever it happens again, or, I don't know, thinking less of myself, which only worsens the problem. But realizing it's all on autopilot. So much of what we do, we don't even actually think about, and things have an effect on us without us consciously even knowing what that effect is. And then we're punishing ourselves for not knowing what's impossible for us to know. Your last couple of weeks haven't been the best, and now you have this awesome news. The news is as beautiful as it was because of the weeks of, I guess, the valley, as people say.
I like to listen to a lot of books, and I take what I can from each one of them and leave the rest. And what you just said there reminds me of something from the book 10% Happier by Don Harris. It's kind of like an autobiography / self-help, but the self-help part doesn't really come towards the very end until he talks about his own journey. Something that he had to learn to do was just forgive himself. We screw up all the time. Forgive yourself, move on. You can either dwell on your mistakes or forgive yourself and try to do better.
We're the only one that actually cares about the mistakes all the time.
I think you'll enjoy that book, specifically because Don Harris is a TV anchor. It was just like a lot of the stuff he was talking about on being an anchor parallels with being an actor, comparing yourself to others, not getting the role, not getting the story. And then he gets into drugs, which I did not do, so I don't have that part, but still.
Yeah, a little bit different.
Yeah.
During the period where you're going full into kinesiology, what were some ways that you were satisfying that creative itch that you might have had? Or were you still doing like film stuff on the side?
During that time, I was also doing judo. I guess that was my outlet.
So martial arts became that for you.
I wasn't the best martial artist, but I did have fun with doing it. And to be honest, I sometimes put more emphasis on doing stuff with judo, the judo club, than actually classwork. So some of my grades suffered with that.
Yeah.
But film, again, is something I always had in the back of my mind, but it's something I didn't really pursue until I got to a certain point, and I was like, why am I waiting?
So you just went full focus
on
kinesiology, like you just kind of went full steam
I want
ahead.
to say full focus. I was also kind of like, what am I going to do next? Is this what I want to do? It's the same period like most other college students have, especially when you get closer toward the end of a program. You're just like, is this really what I'm going to spend the rest of my life with? And then I did physical therapy worked in a rehab facility for a while as well. And it's just like, I don't know if this is right for me.
Like what kind of rehab?
People that had brain injuries. So a lot of them had physical ailments as well because of those brain injuries. Like some of them were caused by car accidents. So they had physical ailments plus the brain injuries. Like there was one person that was there because out of nowhere, the meninges of his brain just popped. The lining of his brain popped for no reason at all. And they have no idea why. And it's just like this guy lost everything just because we don't know why.
What was it like being around, like surrounded by that much trauma? Did it weigh on you when you weren't at work as well?
Not really.
You had a good separation?
Yeah, it didn't weigh on me that much because at the same time, I'm also someone that looks after my grandparents. And it's just like, as you get old, things happen and you can either dwell on it or live with it. And I guess, there are sometimes you dwell on it and like you think of certain things and it's sad. But at the same time, to paraphrase a saying by the Buddha, it's usually translated to life is suffering. It's not life is suffering. It's life is impermanence. Nothing ever stays. Nothing is ever in a stasis. It's always moving, always in flux.
I love that because it perfectly surmises. It perfectly summarizes kind of your very essence, which is you're so good at just kind of like, from my perspective, you keep moving. You take every hit in stride. And I know I've been trying to say things like, oh yeah, you shouldn't dwell on stuff. And it comes from me having a history of dwelling on things. Has that lesson you've learned of just not dwelling and just keep going in stride derived from having to?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been depressed in my life for years. Literally for almost 10 years, I had the same dream, waking up in my own funeral and no one is there. I had a feeling that I was pretty much worthless. I mean nothing to this world. I've wasted a lot of time already in my life just because I was just so much in my own head. Plus, I had my own demons I was dealing with. So I'm at a point now where it's just like you could either deal with those demons or let them take over again. No matter how bad it is, it's always in the past. I love quoting things, and I'm going to quote Master Oogway now.
Oh,
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, Master Oogway from Kung Fu Panda, which I know he stole this from somewhere else, but I don't remember where, but it's Oogway's quote
Everyone
now.
is just repeating things that they've heard from other people.
So according to Master Oogway, yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why it's known as the present.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Shoot.
And that came from a turtle.
I'm going to write that down in my notebook. Obviously, everybody deals with depression in different ways, and everyone finds their way out of it in different ways. You said it was over the span of like years, right? What was I feel like that'd be so intimidating when at that point, it's almost like your homeostasis is to be in that super dark place. How do you work on crawling out of that?
I still deal with it all the time. I mean, it's we all have our own demons that we always will constantly deal with for our whole life. It's
So how did you stop it from like halting you and preventing you from moving?
If you're asking for a specific turning point, I can't remember a specific turning point. And you mentioned earlier that you used to go to therapy. I never really went to therapy. I went to therapy maybe 2 or 3 times during my whole life because it was included with my college tuition. But I never really pursued it, even though I probably should have. What helped me get over it was just more learning. I read a lot of books, listened to a lot of books on different mindsets and different ways to live life. And I took what worked and what didn't work for me, I just left it. That's why there's so many different, like, quote unquote, self-help books. And, you know, the self-help industry is a lot of it is fake. Let's face it. There's a lot of BS in it. But you take whatever nugget of wisdom that will work for you and you work with that. And that's what my journey was getting over that, really. I didn't really see much value in myself. I didn't like myself. So I had to learn to like myself. And also, while I was learning to like myself, I lost a lot of weight and I started to like the way I looked too. Because I used to always just be the fat guy. And then all of a sudden I was like, hey, wait. I like this. But that didn't happen overnight. And even if it did happen overnight, I probably wouldn't have seen it. Slowly working baby steps to get to a point where you're happy. And again, I'll go back, again, quoting, let's go back to the founding fathers. What did they say about what every man should have? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Why is it the pursuit of happiness and not happiness? Because happiness is a fleeting emotion. You always have the right to pursue it, to make yourself better, to feel happy. But you got to realize happiness is an emotion that will come and go, and that's part of life.
I'm going to take something from your book, and I'm going to quote Ethan Hawke.
Oh, go ahead.
And my son's 16, and he's studying history, thinking about the expression, the pursuit of happiness. And he was like, isn't that actually everything? It's the pursuit of it. People think it's going to be grabbing it, holding it, like I can own it, like I can put it in my bank account, or I can build it, or I can... It's actually the pursuit of happiness is happiness. When you think back in the favorite moments of your life, they're like, go into the party.
And then another person I'm going to quote is actually my beautiful girlfriend, Samara. So much of life is just positively brainwashing yourself to think the right thoughts. And then, of course, you have the typical quote of, I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
It seems like, in a way, you allowed your curiosity to be the thing that brought you back into the light, in a way.
Yeah.
I might be projecting, but...
No, that's a perfect, valid way to look at it, because I'm someone that naturally doesn't like to ask for help. And it may be reasons growing up that I felt this way, like if I asked for help, it made me feel X, Y, Z. So what I tend to do is I go look for answers myself. And that just, led me to where I am now. It's just grabbing bits and pieces of knowledge over years.
And I'm sure that's a double-edged sword.
Of course.
Because I do the same thing where, on one hand, you have beautiful independence where you're able to think for yourself, you're able to be self-sufficient. But then I've had to realize that I tend to become a hermit a lot of the time. It's only ironically when you become a hermit that you recognize how important human connection and all that kind of stuff is.
Well, you also have to remember, life is a journey, and what may be right for you at one moment in time is not right for you later. So maybe getting to that point where you're almost hermit-like was right for you for that point, but then now you have to open the next chapter of your life and keep moving forward. You're never in stasis. Humankind is never in stasis. You're always learning, you're always growing, you're always changing. And if you're the same person you were 10 years ago, you haven't changed, but the world has.
Big issues.
Yeah.
One thing we did, I was about to say recently, but this was now like a year ago almost. We were doing appointment.
Yeah.
And I remember you going to school to start like creating films, right?
Yeah.
Because are you looking to like start creating more? Oh, you're a producer on that thing with Veronica too.
Yeah. I went back to UTA to study film, one, because I did want to learn more about film, but two, I didn't see a path forward with acting. Like I said, up until last year, I was losing money year over year from acting.
Yeah.
Then I graduated UTA and with film and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, I started booking a lot. I started to see a possible path forward with acting. Short-term goals would be bicoastal representation. This may be a lofty goal, but quadruple what I made last year, this year for film. How am I going to do that? I don't quite know yet. But
so I'll tell you this. Write it down somewhere. Write it down in a journal. When you write shit down, this starts to happen. So I'll use like Slate for an example.
Yeah.
I had this goal to get 16 bookings in a month, which is it sounded like the most illogical thing. The idea was, off of just initial deposits, I'll at least cover rent, right?
Yeah.
I, of course, brought it to my owners and I was like, hey, this is my goal. And they were like, damn, January, I hit 15.
Nice.
And my max I'd ever hit in a month was probably like 8. For some reason, the act of writing it down, and I think if you get into like the metaphysical side of it or even the logical side of it, something by writing it down makes it feel much more attainable and tangible, and so you behave in a way that makes it easier to come by because now you're actually taking the action needed.
All right, take your pants off and do some yoga with me.
Just write it down and interesting stuff will happen.
Last year, that's kind of what happened. I put a random number out there in the world. I was like, I'm going to make this much from acting.
Yeah.
Had no plan of doing it. I surpassed that. If you include 2020, which 2020 doesn't count, 2019 and 2018, the amount that I wanted to make last year was more than those 3 years combined. And I surpassed that with no real plan. So I was like, all right, this year, let's try to quadruple that. The first plan of action would be, I personally believe the more you audition, the more you have chances of booking. Let's get more auditions. How do I get more auditions? Need to, 1, put myself out there more, but 2, I'm already kind of tapped out in Texas. I already have 2 agents in Texas, and all the casting directors know of me. I'm not going to say they know me, but they've all seen my face before. So now it's time to reach out to other locales.
I think that's been, because it's a combination of more auditions, of course, but also just there's the whole idea of it takes 1,000 hours or 10,000 hours to master any pursuit that you want. And the thing that's really worked for me is just finding a way to consistently act every single week and doing it in a way that I can control. So that's why I started this taping workshop here that I do on Thursdays. It became this way where it's not me waiting for auditions to come in. I have an audition every single week, no matter what. It's a beautiful thing when you combine momentum with vision. All of a sudden, everything just starts to fall into place in a way, which is why I believe you're going to quadruple. I'm going to finalize with a question that I ask almost all of my guests except for Greg Pirtle. I'm sorry, Greg. Even though the last 3 ones of these I've recorded, I've said I'm sorry to go. But anyway, right now, what is the personal mantra that you're living by?
If I were to look back over the last couple of months and pick something that I guess you could say would apply to me, it would be stop expecting and just do the work. Do not live in your own head and move forward.
I love that. I agree.
You went down low, like the ASMR type voice there with that. I love that.
Oh, thank you. Eventually, I want to record an ASMR with these.
Let's do it. Next time we do it.
Oh, yeah.
Just whisper.
Thank you so much, Faheem Rashid. You are a badass, and I wish you the best of luck. And thank you for spooning with me today.
I'll spoon with you anytime.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.